Hello everyone. Today I am going to talk about doing business in Mexico and doing business in the US. But before I get into it, I want to talk about our business. That being Logic Found Consulting Firm. There is a quote that I think is very important for doing businesses and also on a personal level. That is, we all make choices, but in the end, our choices make us. Alright, let's talk about our business. Logic Found Consulting Firm. My name is Daniel Praza. I joined the firm 2 years ago, and since then I have become a sort of project manager for the firm. And with the help of my team, I have helped them and many businesses in their venues and ventures for reaching outside of Mexico as well as foreign companies in their expansions into Mexico. In this, we have been mostly successful thus far, but we are always looking for more clients and more experiences. In the time I started studying in Harvard University, I have always been interested, especially in exports and imports, and how some countries are so dependent on each other for so much. This has helped me in my current career, of course. Moving on to the client. I'm here today to talk about our recent client, that being Gregory Nuts and Bolts. They are a parts manufacturer located in Tucson, Arizona. Mainly, they create or manufacture materials like those of construction. And they see a possible business opportunity in entering the Mexican market that they want to take an advantage of. And that is where we, Logic Found Consulting Firm, come in. Alright, let's talk a little bit about what's important to take into account when going into Mexico. So, the demographics and purchasing power. The Mexican demographic has a lot of workers in the construction field because there are a lot of independent workers such as like albañiles and the like that are basically like a jack of all trades that could be a purchasing power for the company. Of course, there is also construction businesses that are bigger, and as well as auto parts manufacturers that could benefit from a provider like Gregory Nuts and Bolts. The main reason why the materials are thought to be a good sell for the market in Mexico is because we think they can sell some products to the auto parts industry as well as the construction industry. They both are huge in Mexico and are also looking into working with building and construction companies or some resale companies, which could be a better fit for their usual clientele. So, when entering into Mexico, it is of course important to take into account the political system, which, even though it has some corruption and a lot of processes made to be slow and tedious, it is of course important to also take into account that Mexico has a huge capacity for growth. That is economic growth, of course. And, well, also the economics surrounding the industry. Well, in Mexico there is a mixed economy, which means that there are both privately owned and state-owned companies. Mexico's economic growth and success is due to the fact that they have a lot of exports to the US, as well as interest in the investment and participation for certain industries, for example, the industry sector, which contributes about 30% of the GDP. So this, as well as low labor costs and the proximity to the US, and other things like the EMEX program that allows for authorized companies that are parts of the manufacturing industry to basically avoid payment of important duties or the general import tax. All of this helps make it attractive to enter the industry of manufacturing in Mexico. There are of course a lot of government regulation and legal systems that are important to take into account, which We won't get into the specific of, but there are some fiscal incentives and foreign direct investments in Mexico that are important to know about. Mexico's foreign direct investments are regulated by the Foreign Investment Law. The FIL gives investors the same rights, obligation, and remedies that Mexican nationals have. There are requirements to be granted said rights. You need approval from the National Commission of Foreign Investments if the foreign investor wants an equity stake higher than 49% of the shares of a Mexican company. Investors also need to file a questionnaire about the origin of their investment, and there is a fee to pay, of course. There is also the currency that needs to be taken into account. So the Mexican peso is currently sitting at $20.06. I mean pesos, which equates to $1. And there are some concerns of inflation and possibly a drop in its value. There is some interesting advantage in coming into Mexico since the dollar is usually worth more than the peso. This can help save money or even make more money in the moment that the currency exchange is done. If it is done at the right time, there could be a profit to be made, of course. Mexican culture in the workplace. Well, business in Mexico is very relationship heavy, and so it is important to look for a business partners to establish a relationship when entering the market. This is important because it will also help with getting used to working with different people. It is also important for conducting business to have learned Spanish, but of course, since English is so well known, there might be the possibility for some employee in a Mexican company to already know Spanish, but it is almost something that you definitely need for working here to learn Spanish. Moving on. Relevant fiscal and or environmental regulations. There are some regulations for air pollution, which could be important when exporting goods, for most immobile and itinerant sources. There are atmospheric air quality standards that need to be kept by law. There is also a need for waste management and reduction that has a standard also that needs to be met. In all likelihood, whatever regulations that are in place in the US should be up to standards in Mexico. The tax that will be needed to be paid in the Mexican government will be very important point to look into. So, Mexican hiring practices, employment, wages, etc. Work contracts are required in Mexico, and this should go over what the work law or Ley Federal del Trabajo stipulates as the minimum requirements for things such as payment, vacation, days, liquidation, etc. The minimum wage in Mexico is around 141 pesos a day, when compared to the minimum wage in the US that can vary from state to state, that being from around $10 to $12 per hour, which is very different. Something else to take into account are trade policy details in terms of the free trade agreement. While currently there are no tariffs for products made in the United States to meet the rules of origin requirements under the USMCA, this could of course change someday, so it's something to look out for. So, should Gregory Nuts and Bolts enter the Mexican market? I think they have a good opportunity in their hands, but it is a sort of high risk, high reward scenario. So of course, there are a lot of factors to take into account. While I think the risk is worth it, there will be of course a huge investment at risk. So while the chance is good, they should maybe hold out for a little bit to see how the market and local currency perform, to see if they could come into it while it's either cheaper or in a healthier state. So that's Gregory Nuts and Bolts. I think they have a good shot here.